Hey, welcome in. Well, we've got another in our continuing series looking at Victor Davis Hanson articles, and these seem to be really popular. You know, a lot of people really like the way that Victor Davis Hanson thinks and his analysis of current events and politics. And these are great because, you know, there's a lot more meat on them than you get from, you know, a 3-minute appearance on Fox News. As good as he is in those moments. But this is something else, and I think it's really valuable. And apparently a lot of other people do too. So let's get to it. This one is from 4 days ago, and the headline is, Joe Biden looks like Democrats' 2020 nominee. Here are 3 predictions. And this basically follows the kind of rise, fall, and then rise again of Joe Biden. So it starts, for most of early 2019, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, the declared custodian of liberalism, who would continue the Obama glory years, seemed unstoppable. He led all other rivals for months. Biden seemed above the fray. Many Democrats saw the pre-debate and pre-election race for the nomination as more of a Biden coronation than a contest. In the summer and fall debates of 2019, Biden was occasionally confused about dates, places, names, and facts. In public appearances, he often seemed grouchy or dazed. Yeah, it was really funny, actually. I mean, I thought that he was done. I thought that Biden was I thought there's no way this guy gets the nomination. Now it seems like he's definitely going to. It's been a weird trip. It's been a really weird trip watching this. And it's told us a lot about the media. But anyway, let's continue. Biden was once faulted for being too handsy in his interactions with women. Now he was being criticized for losing his temper and insulting people during campaign stops. Hey, fat, remember that? Dog-faced pony soldier, that happened. Horse's ass, that happened. Let's also take a look at something here quickly. And let's take a quick look at this. Joe Biden hasn't changed his behavior with girls and women. For his base, that might be fine. This was from July 13th, 2019. So that was a while ago. Recent incidents have drawn scrutiny, but some voters may like Biden just the way he is. Yeah, there was a little bit of a thing from the progressive wing of the party there, but really, you gotta pass. I mean, do I think he was assaulting those people? No. Was it weird and creepy? Yes. Was there a ton of hypocrisy from the press with the way they've treated Trump? Absolutely. Again, this whole thing with Biden has actually told us a ton about the press. Anyway, let's continue. Biden dived in the polls. Democratic candidates such as Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg, Julian Castro, Kristen Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren had all wounded the septuagenarian Biden, portraying him as too moderate and out of touch with contemporary green and diversity issues. Well, we found out how much wokeness really matters to the Democratic machine, haven't we? And that's been another education. Meanwhile, rival Bernie Sanders in the new year took over the lead in the polls. He focused on evil corporations, an unfair America, and a rigged system. His populism drew crowds even as his socialism terrified the Democratic Party establishment. By early 2020, Sanders was feared to be unstoppable. And I'm one of those people who just assumed it was going to be him. He did look unstoppable. Hey, if you could subscribe, like, and share, that really helps me out. Thanks a lot. That's why it's been just with everything that's going on now with the beer bug happening, it's just been a crazy, crazy time. Anyway, by early 2020, Sanders was feared to be unstoppable. Yes, he was. Multi-billionaire former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg jumped into the race with a storm of endorsements and paid ads. Bloomberg was supposed to save the Democratic Party from Sanders' socialism in the wake of Biden's implosion. And now it seems like somehow a long time ago, but yeah, Biden seemed to be done. If that hadn't been the case, Bloomberg wouldn't have jumped into the race in the first place. Anyway, then the unanticipated happened. Now, for people that have been following Bernie for a long time, I don't think it was that unanticipated. But anyway, Sanders began praising Cuba and other Marxist countries. Crazy. Thereby confirming criticism that he really was too soft on communism. Well, they did honeymoon in the Soviet Union, so that was a clue right there. Anyway, it goes on. Bloomberg entered his first two debates and performed dismally. Almost overnight, he nullified his $500 million investment in a radio, television, social media, and mailing campaign. But Biden just stayed old Joe Biden, occasional bewilderment, gaffes and all. As others sank in the polls, Biden seemed a known quantity in comparison. And I think a big part of it is that Sanders became a real known quantity. I mean, a lot of people, they're not that informed when they vote, especially young people. I mean, Bernie Sanders has had a lot of time in the spotlight in the public eye by now, and people are finding out what he actually is. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think a lot of people just didn't realize what Bernie Sanders is, that he's really a committed socialist. You know, it's not just a few, giveaways around the edges, He's actually a pretty dangerous guy, economically and politically. So it goes on, and we'll digest this a little bit. The primaries headed south where Biden had an advantage, and he started doing better. Bloomberg dropped out of the race. But at no time did Biden cease his bloopers or embarrassing moments of forgetfulness and confusion. The field changed, not Biden himself. After Super Tuesday, Biden was, by process of elimination, suddenly the frontrunner in one of the more amazing comebacks in primary history. It's amazing because nobody saw it coming, and the reason that nobody saw it coming was because Biden has so little to offer. I mean, all that he has is that he's not Trump. But anyway, how will Biden beat Trump? Biden's threefold strategy is obvious. First, Biden will copy the Bloomberg playbook and avoid campaign appearances as much as possible, instead relying on ads, endorsements, and the occasional short, teleprompter-aided speech, which is wise. I think that the current issue that's engulfing the world, politically benefits Biden in the sense that he doesn't have to go and do big rallies. They've been trying to keep him to like 7 minutes or less in speaking engagements, right? That's not really very good. So he's not capable, obviously, of doing an hour-long rally or even half an hour. In the last debate, he did better than I thought. The bar is so low for Biden that as long as his eyes didn't start bleeding and his teeth didn't fly out, in the middle of talking, or he didn't get confused and suddenly think that he's King Farouk. The bar is so low that as long as he doesn't humiliate himself, that's considered a victory. But keeping him out of the public eye and having to talk too much can only benefit him. And that's very sad to say. Of course, what would really help him is being in the public eye competently, looking competent in the public eye, looking like somebody with a plan who knows what he's doing, somebody that can inspire confidence. On that note, let's take a look at this. Here's Biden's, after basically disappearing for a while, he resurfaced with this pandemic speech. Let's just take a peek at this.
We need to activate the reserve corps of doctors and nurses and beef up the number of responders dealing with these crush of cases. And in addition to that, we have to make sure that we are in a position that we are. Well, let me go to the second thing. I've spoken enough of that. The president must use the Defense Production Act to radically increase the supply of critical goods needed to treat patients and protect our healthcare workers and first responders.
Okay, so does that inspire confidence? I think if you're going to lose the kind of positive press you might get by looking like a competent leader in a time of crisis, well, obviously that doesn't do that, right? He can't do that. So if you're going to take the trade-off of that or just not looking terrible, you'll just take the not looking terrible, right? Because I don't know, are they going to do more of these? What's the point? What's the point of doing more of these? That can't help him. It's honestly better if people just don't know that he's there for a while. What was he doing with his hand there? It's like he was reading off cue cards. It wasn't even reading off a teleprompter. It looks like he was like, bring up the next cue card. It's bizarre. It's weird, He's befuddled. He doesn't really know what's happening there. I don't know how you can. The people that are handling him and setting all this stuff up, obviously they're not doing a very good job. Or maybe Joe is just impossible to work with at this point. Anyway, it's sad. Anyway, let's get to the rest of the strategy. Biden will also name administration officials in advance and use a dozen or so of them as surrogates and anti-Trump attack dogs on the campaign trail. So, I mean, while that can be effective, obviously, he's still the head of it, right? He has still got to be the leader, and that's going to be a problem. Anyway, the subtext will be that the abstract idea of Biden is preferable to the concrete reality of hearing him speak or seeing him in action. God, it's sad. It's so weird. I'm the only one who thinks that it's weird that this even has to be dealt with in terms of, a Biden strategy. A second Biden's running mate, with a wink and a nod, will be sold as a likely future president sooner than later. And he said that he's going to nominate a woman. So he's right on target with the pandering there. And the hope is obviously that helps him with the base. Such a running mate could help Biden win over the base, and he or she could solve the Democratic Party's embarrassing dilemma of damning white privilege while ending up with two elderly white men as finalists for the nomination. And the hypocrisy is amazing, right? If either of them cared, Bernie or Biden, cared about diversity as much as they say they do, 1% as much as they say they do, they just drop out. I mean, they wouldn't go for the nomination in the first place. They'd all be supporting Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or somebody, right? They don't actually care, obviously. Anyway, let's get to the third part. No one knows the trajectory of the current issue that's affecting the world right now, but the economic damage it is inflicting on the economy is already considerable. And that's true. I'm not sure that anybody is really going to blame Trump. I mean, aside from the hardcore left-wing base that's just orange man bad 24/7, and we're seeing that, right? And we're seeing in the media, with was it Bloomberg News putting out that article, which I had done another video on, about how if you get an overdose of hydroxychloroquine, it'll kill you. Just like every other drug in the world, right? We can just only assume that doctors aren't going to prescribe lethal doses of it. That would be my assumption. Anyway, tons of Trump derangement syndrome to go around, but the Democrats and the mainstream media are going by the idea that you can fool all the people all the time. Well, you can't. You can fool some of them some of the time. You can't fool them all of the time. I think it's going to be a losing strategy for them. Anyway, Democratic strategists are demagoguing it in a way that seems analogous to the freak storm Katrina, which wrecked the second term of George W. Bush, or the 2008 financial meltdown, which ruined a Republican political brand, and with it, the candidacy of John McCain. See, with this, we know it's not malfeasance. It's not corporate malfeasance that caused this. What we know it is that China badly, criminally mishandled the outbreak of coronavirus in their own country. They arrested whistleblowers. They destroyed evidence. They tried to keep it quiet. They didn't let the rest of the world in on it. When they had a chance to really get a hold of it before it became an epidemic, they refused foreign doctors. They refused doctors from the CDC. They refused to acknowledge what they had on their hands. They knew what it was, and they hid it from the world until it was far too late. I don't think Trump's going to get blamed for that. And I don't think that any sane person gets upset when they hear Chinese virus, any more than a sane person gets upset when they hear Ebola or West Nile virus. I just think that the wokeness, it only lasts as long as everything's safe and everything's comfortable, right? As soon as things get serious, I don't think people are interested in wokeness anymore and political correctness. Or I think people say, I didn't like all that political correctness before, but now is really not the time for it. In 2020, we will hear a lot from candidate Biden, but less frequently will we see him in person, speaking to or mixing with crowds, because it's been shown, hey, fat, it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. He just simply can't be trusted in those situations. You can't have him threatening, every single voter with fighting them outside, out back, or challenging them to push-up competitions. You just can't do it. Anyway, it's bad politics, right? It's just bad politics, right? Anyway, his running mate will be advertised as the future of the Democratic Party with a subtext of soon becoming president. And the 24/7 message won't be collusion or impeachment, but the coronavirus, trying to blame the coronavirus on Trump. And I do think there's one wrinkle in this. Running mate will be advertised as the future of the Democratic Party. As crazy as it sounds, I'm still not ruling out Hillary. I mean, we know what happens to Biden shortly after that, don't we? Wink, wink. But I'm still not ruling that out. I'm still not ruling that out. I've seen too many crazy things lately to rule that out. Anyway, let's end this off. There are problems with all these strategies. Are there ever? But for now, the Democratic Party has gone from ruin in late February to hope in late March. Even as gaffe-prone Joe Biden just stayed the same all along. And it is funny, isn't it? I mean, he didn't do anything different. It's not like he all of a sudden had this renaissance of competency or charisma or charm or anything like that. No, he's exactly the same. In fact, he's worse than he was. And it really tells you that it doesn't really have anything to do with Joe Biden. It has to do with the DNC. It has to do with donors. It has to do with the mainstream media. It has to do with Trump derangement syndrome, with Orange Man bad. Because Biden just, he hasn't had some renaissance. He's the same, if not worse, than he was a year ago. Anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in. Please subscribe, because if you're watching this on YouTube, the algorithm does not want to show you this kind of content. So you got to subscribe if you want to see more. If you like these Victor Davis Hanson videos, there's a Victor Davis Hanson playlist on my channel where there's more articles just like this. If you don't want to watch my videos, but you want to listen, you can. Radio Baloney, it's on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and iTunes and Spotify and CastBox and Spreaker and like a million more. Radio Baloney, look it up. You will find it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.